All right, today we are ranking the top 12 wide receivers under 25. So before we even get this started, A.J. Brown is 25. I mean, so if they're in this video, they are under 25. So don't go to the comments saying, well, what about this person? We got all the players. We're going to rank them today. We're going to tell you, which cornerstone wide receivers that you can be building your dynasty teams around. It should be a lot of fun. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. We've got content like this coming out every single week. So if you're a junkie, you want lots of content, you want lots of things like this, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the videos. Make sure you head over to our locals page where you get all of our exclusive content, exclusive advice, etc. Let's get into it. So these are going to be tier rankings. We're going to rank the top 12 again under 25. And, although we will have these guys in tiers, we are going to rank them 1 through 12. And they will be, I would take this guy over this guy, but they're in the same tier, so we don't blame other people for taking them. And with these wide receivers, again, and we've talked about this a lot on this show, we are big young wide receiver fans. And most dynasty players are. And you can say, well, this is pretty elementary dynasty stuff. Well, I mean, it may be. But again, number one, we're here to help people who are new to dynasty as well. So not everybody's been playing dynasty for 25 years like you. But number two, sometimes even the most experienced dynasty players tend to forget some of this stuff. So we really like investing in young wide receivers, especially investing in rookie wide receivers because of how they maintain their value. But because of the way that the NFL game is played now, because of the air raid offense, because of how much volume some of these receivers are getting, young wide receivers are becoming increasingly valuable for your dynasty team. So we're going to rank 12 of them under 25, starting with tier 1, Justin Jefferson. Yes, Justin Jefferson is in his own tier. Where is Jamar Chase? Not in a tier with Justin Jefferson. Why?
Because while Jamar Chase is amazing and his game-to-game ceiling is just as high as Justin Jefferson, you're always going to have T. Higgins in that offense. And Justin Jefferson is just, I'm sorry, guys, Justin Jefferson's a better receiver than Jamar Chase is. Jamar Chase is amazing after the catch. He's an amazing dynasty wide receiver asset. Give me Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase 10 times out of 10.
It's not anything against Jamar. Jamar is a great wide receiver, an elite wide receiver. He absolutely does. I picked him in the first round of startup this year. He absolutely deserves to be going there. It's not anything about Jamar. It's about Justin Jefferson. Guys, Justin Jefferson, you are witnessing what will end up being one of the greatest wide receiver careers of all time, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're looking at some of the games that they've played before, I mean, Chase, I would wager, is more dependent on yardage in terms of production and touchdowns, whereas Justin Jefferson can score 35 points without scoring a touchdown.
And the argument could be made, Chase is tied to Joe Burrow. That's a good argument.
Yeah.
But I mean, it even says, I think that highlights our point even more. Justin Jefferson has Kirk Cousins thrown to him, and he's the 5th overall player in PPR leagues. And Kirk Cousins, I'm sorry, he's really cool on the play at times with his chains, but he can stink sometimes. And Justin Jefferson will still put up 30 points. He is unmatched. It's nothing to do with Jamar. Jamar is a great receiver tied to an elite quarterback. Justin Jefferson's in a tier of his own. And then you have Jamar Chase. And then you have CeeDee Lamb even in tier 2. And so this might be even controversial that we're putting CeeDee Lamb with Jamar Chase.
It's understandable.
But the fact of the matter is, as good as Jamar Chase is, and he has T. Higgins there, and he is tied to an elite quarterback, so that obviously that's going to help him. CD is going to get the majority of the targets in Dallas. He's tied also to an elite quarterback, whether you want to admit it or not. Dak is more than capable to support CeeDee Lamb producing at an elite fantasy level on a wide receiver basis. CeeDee Lamb, his first couple of years we weren't sure, and what's he going to do, and how do we approach CeeDee Lamb, and is he going to develop into that player that we always thought he was going to be? And I think the short answer that we were able to figure out this year is that, yes, CeeDee Lamb is that elite wide receiver that we thought he was going to. He's still very young. He scored at a high rate this year. He's starting to finally establish himself as one of the dominant wide receivers in the NFL. And because of that, and considering his age, and considering his QB situation, and considering the lack of competition for targets that he's probably going to get in Dallas, I think he's worthy of moving up into this tier with Jamar Chase. So,
yeah, I completely agree with you there. And I think there's nowhere but up to go for him. I think you'll see with Dallas acquiring T.Y. Hilton in free agency in the middle of the season or towards the end of the season this year, I think that really showed how desperate the Cowboys are for one of those field stretching wide receivers. You're going to see them probably draft a receiver in the second round this year. I would not be surprised if they do. I personally really would love to see Marvin Mims there. I think he's a perfect match for their offense. And I think you could also see CeeDee Lamb's value fall because of that if they draft another receiver, and I'm smash buying CeeDee if that happens. So keep an eye out for that. Completely understands. We personally both of us are taking Jamar Chase over CeeDee. I think we're absolutely doing that. In terms of the production tier, we're going to have them the same. So
yeah, and again, let us know in the comments. But we know if you disagree, you probably want those two in the top tier and then CeeDee in the tier below.
Yeah,
so
it's completely fine.
This is where it gets hairy. We're going to move down to tier 3 here, and let's talk about some of these guys. So 4th, over Waddle, over Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is just us calling our shot. We have Garrett Wilson, and I have liked Garrett Wilson. Not that I knew or anything because I'm, me.
You liked him more than Simon and I did.
But I liked Garrett Wilson from a long time ago, since he was at Ohio State. I loved him, and honestly, I loved Olave too. And so Garrett Wilson over Jalen Waddle is going to be hard to sell because, you can make the argument. Number one, Waddle has Tua Tagovailoa, which is a good argument. Number two, Tyreek Hill actually does help Jalen Waddle some, and that is also true as well. And somebody said something to me about Jalen Waddle, and I'll get back to Garrett Wilson here in a second, but about Jalen Waddle that actually kind of opened my eyes a little bit, and we'll probably get some. I'm just repeating what I heard that somebody told me. They said Jalen Waddle actually has established himself as a little bit of a boom or bust player. And looking back at his game log, it was you. You are so smart. I knew it was some genius that told me that, but actually, looking at his game log, you're right. I mean, he is scoring like 4 or 5 points, or he's going off. And while he has that elite ceiling, and we saw that this year paired with Tyreek Hill, and he had those games where he was just unstoppable, and he's a great talent, and he's incredible. And Tua proved that he could support both of these guys. Garrett Wilson, in my opinion, is just as good, if not better, of a wide receiver talent and a wide receiver as a whole. And look what he did in his rookie season, although Jalen Waddle also, set the record for receptions his rookie season. Garrett Wilson, over 1,000 yards. He had nobody throwing him the ball. I mean, Zach Wilson is butt. Mike White was cool there for another couple weeks. He's not really that great. Joe Flacco is 100 years old at this point. And Garrett Wilson still, outside of when Zach Wilson was on the field, when Garrett Wilson was producing at an extremely high level every single time.
Garrett Wilson is QB proof.
He's 22.
He had 200 less receiving yards than CeeDee Lamb did with no quarterback. None.
Look, this is just us projecting the future. I think next year Garrett Wilson will have established himself as the wide receiver 4 under 25, or maybe even higher.
Yeah, and I think
what's his ceiling? I think his ceiling is CeeDee Chase level, pretty easily.
Yeah. This to me, I view this Wilson versus Waddle situation as
they're in the same tier though.
Yeah, same tier, absolutely. But it's almost like a mini Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase thing, where we're talking about boom or bust, definitely dependent on yards after the catch. That would be Waddle more than Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is just the better receiver. I think he's just a better.
We love Waddle,
route runner. Waddle's incredibly
in a startup draft. I'll take Waddle over Wilson, and I'm fine with that. But just for all intents and purposes, we like Wilson over Waddle right now. So then Waddle, obviously in his own right, a very elite wide receiver, and Tua has proved that he supported him, so he's obviously going to be in the top 5 here. And then Amon-Ra, we've done our public apology. We have now ranked him as the wide receiver 6 under 25. We think he's legit. He had a very, very good year, even with Jared Goff, which Jared Goff had a fairly nice season, actually. But still, that's fairly impressive. Considering the fact that he's competing for targets with Swift, and for half the season he was competing for targets with Hawkinson, and the fact that the Lions actually in their offensive scheme there, they get the ball to a fair amount of different players, and Amon-Ra still got his own every single time. And not to mention, he went on that streak where he was producing at just a historic level. So, Amon-Ra, we believe, we are sorry that we ever doubted him, but he absolutely belongs in this third tier. I think he's another guy that, you could make an argument that could even keep jumping. We'll see. We aren't so sure about that, and we have our questions still about Amon-Ra, but we can't deny that he belongs here in terms of with these other elite wide receivers.
Yeah, if your argument is to drop him down a little further and maybe even have him behind Olave and JSN, I'd say, don't do that yet, because we don't know the landing spot that JSN is going to be in, and we also have no idea what JMO is going to do in Detroit, and what type of receiver is he going to be? What is that going to look like in terms of fantasy production? Is that going to take away from Amon-Ra? Is that going to help him? Are we going to see another A.J. Brown helping Devonta Smith and vice versa? Are we going to see another Tyreek Hill helping Jalen Waddle and vice versa? I don't know. We really don't know. So for now, we have to have Amon-Ra here. We can't necessarily justify dropping him any lower. We can have preferences, and I think it's definitely fair to say, Olave could eventually jump Amon-Ra. He has better draft capital. There's no one to take away any targets from him in New Orleans. And, sometimes I may pass up in a startup draft. I may pass up on Amon-Ra and get Olave around later because I just think the value is better there, and he has a better chance to jump up than Amon-Ra does. That's completely understandable, and I would even say I'd agree with you there. With JSN, again, landing spot we don't know about yet. He could jump. He could fall a spot. He could fall a tier. We don't really know. But we know how talented he is. We know what he did at Ohio State, outproducing Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and look where they are now in the NFL. If you're worried about JSN being a slot receiver, since when did being a slot receiver really matter that much for a talented receiver in the NFL in terms of fantasy production? It doesn't really if you're good.
No, it
doesn't.
And this is early. Obviously, this is January. So this is going to be based on what type of prospect they are, and then just the general buzz around the NFL about where they could possibly land in the draft. And the word with JSN, I think everybody knows how good of a prospect Jackson Smith-Njigba is. I think if he would have played a full year this year, we'd probably already have him at the top of tier 3. I mean, maybe ahead of Garrett Wilson, but because of all the circumstances, because of the risk that comes with putting a rookie wide receiver on here, somebody that hasn't played an NFL snap, I think we're comfortable putting him where he's at. And the reason we put him behind Olave's done it. Olave is in a good situation. He's in a situation where he's probably going to get a quarterback upgrade here in the near future. Hopefully, he's going to be the wide receiver one there. He has less target competition. Michael Thomas does not count, Nathan. And with Chris Olave, I mean, he in terms of the eye test, his rookie year, he's looking fantastic. Yeah. So I think he's absolutely deserving of that too. And then again, I could see JSN jumping up as high as any of these dudes. I mean, JSN's ceiling, who knows what it is? It's just a big question mark, and we just kind of have to weigh that into these rankings. And I think the biggest knock we're going to get here is why is T. Higgins in tier 4? So I kind of explain myself in terms of T. Higgins, and I think you'll give your part on this too. But with Higgins, I like T. Higgins a lot. I like T. Higgins, the player, a lot. I love how he plays. I think he's an elite NFL wide receiver. I think if he were on another team, I think he'd be in tier 2.
Yeah,
easily. It is something though that he's on a team with Jamar Chase, and it is something that they have Joe Mixon. It is something that they find ways to get Tyler Boyd involved and Hayden Hurst. I mean, it's not insignificant, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm gonna refer to you for the individual metrics for Higgins this year. And while I love T. Higgins, I think he's being overdrafted in startups, and I think the best argument, again, that you could make with T. Higgins is the quarterback landscape is bare. He's tied to an elite one. That makes absolute sense. But in terms of actual, in terms of target competition, in terms of talent, I'm definitely taking Olave. Sorry. Amon-Ra even. I definitely take Amon-Ra. All the guys in tier 3 I'm taking over Higgins pretty clearly. Even Jackson Smith-Njigba. I mean, you can make the argument that you should have T. Higgins above JSN, but JSN is a better prospect than Higgins was. So we're doing this based on the level of prospect these rookies are. JSN is a better prospect than Higgins was, and JSN projects to be the level wide receiver in the NFL, if not higher than T. Higgins is currently. So there's really no reason to put T. Higgins above any of those guys in tier 3. In fact, I think that I would take T. Higgins a little bit lower than what the consensus is, and I think you kind of have some reasons why here.
Yeah, I think T. Higgins' floor is really, really nice. I mean, obviously, you're starting him every week. Obviously, you're really comfortable about it, and you love his opportunity of having a really successful week of, a 25-plus point game. However, he's played 3 years so far, and he has never even broken 1,100 receiving yards. Granted, this year, it does say on Sleeper that he played all 17 games. It's not true. He didn't even play over 25% of the snaps in 4 of those. He left the game early, or he was a game time
decision, which matters, by the way.
Played. That absolutely matters in terms of his points per game, because that's a knock on his points per game, on Player Profiler or anything, because they consider that a played game for him. Still, that being said, in the games that he did play this year, in the full 13 games that he played, he only produced as a wide receiver 1 that week 4 times. And that's really concerning. When you're looking for a guy, when you're looking for an elite wide receiver, when we say elite, we say he has an opportunity every single week to produce at a top 3 wide receiver level or a top 5 wide receiver level that week. And Higgins just doesn't seem to have that consistently. And I mean, in all that to say, he still hasn't even been a wide receiver 1 yet. Devonta Smith is playing with with less passing volume in the Eagles offense and with AJ Brown. And he still managed to be a wide receiver 1. I think you could wager, or I think you could, you can make an argument here that Devonta Smith could go over T. Higgins.
Maybe by the time we release this video, I'll change that, because I think that you could make a really good argument. Devonta Smith was a wide receiver 1. Let's go into Devonta Smith now. I think
we were so right about Devonta Smith. It's not even.
We'll take our victory lap on that, man. We were screaming to buy him all last season. It's the Devonta Smith rule now that, if you're over like 900 yards in your rookie year, like, whoa. And we have 2 of those guys on those lists, and that's why they're ranked so high. The reason Devonta's not ranked over them is because, he is number 1 on a lower volume passing offense compared to some of these guys, and I know some of these other guys are as well. But number 2, he's playing with AJ Brown, and AJ Brown is the wide receiver 1 there. I mean, AJ Brown is a beast. He's dominant. He is going to get his share every single game. He's also playing with Dallas Goedert. He's also playing with the team that runs the ball a lot and playing with a quarterback that they will use to run the ball as well. So with Devonta Smith, we love him. I think he could go anywhere here from 4 to 12. And if you made the argument, you would tell me, Devonta Smith's wide receiver 4. I wouldn't argue with that. I mean, I'd be fine with that. But for now, I think we have to put T. Higgins above him just because T. Higgins, great wide receiver. He's tied to a better passing quarterback and
there's just more volume there. It's as simple as that, and that's probably, again, like you said, that's probably why we'll have Higgins over right there right now. But again, if you want to flip flop these 2 guys and have Devonta Smith over him, all power to you, man. We have no problem with it.
And then Drake London. And, Drake London, I think people are down on Drake London right now, which I think is kind of funny because he still had 750 yards his rookie year. And I mean, if you have Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, the former Cincinnati quarterback, the guy that everybody's really high on right now, throwing you the ball, and you're playing alongside Kyle Pitts, and you're playing in Arthur Smith's offense, and you still have 750 yards your first year in the NFL, to me, this is equivalent to what Devonta was last year. I'm looking at Drake London. I'm like, okay, this guy can play. And he's going to produce when, the situation morphs a little bit. When will that be? I don't know. I know Arthur Smith hates our fantasy teams, and he hates your fantasy players. And you have to deal with that, and I do too. I had to deal with it with Pitts this year. But I know I'm not the only one. But with Drake London, promising rookie season, he was a very good prospect. He's the highest draft capital of any receiver that came out of this class. And although he's not ranked higher than any of them, it's just because of his situation. Drake London will be the wide receiver 1 in Atlanta. Kyle Pitts is like a wide receiver and technically almost a wide receiver, but he is a tight end. So Drake London is the wide receiver 1. I think they'll get fairly comparable amounts of targets there once they actually get a QB and a coach. And then at that point, Drake London, how high does he rise? Who knows? Who knows? And people, wanted to dog on some of his skill set last year, and I think he proved all of that wrong. And I think he absolutely belongs here. Then lastly, we've got Quentin Johnston. So give us the rundown on him.
Yeah, so it's true. We don't have Christian Watson here on the last spot. We don't have Treylon Burks, and we don't have the beloved George Pickens that all of you are just obsessed with. Quentin Johnston just has a higher ceiling than all of these guys. I think the only guy who would give him a run for his money to be here, and I would have no problem putting Treylon Burks here in place of Quentin Johnston.
Same.
I really wouldn't. I think Burks is a really good value right now in terms of where he's going in startups and ADP. Quentin Johnston just has a higher ceiling. And we're going to bet on that right now. We don't know what the landing spot looks like, but he just has too many physical tools that are elite to ignore. So
he's threatening to get elite draft capital too. And there are a lot of traits. Again, there are a lot of physical traits. There are a lot of traits that Quentin Johnston has that make him, a very good prospect and make him a very high ceiling fantasy prospect. That said, we're just going based on the buzz. We're going based off the level of prospect, and he checks out to be a fairly good prospect according to NFL scouts from what we've heard in the early returns. So
yeah, little Dynasty rookie analysis advice here. Don't buy Quentin Johnston now. Wait until the middle of the season, because I'm almost willing to bet right now that he's not going to produce right off the bat at an elite level. He's going to be more of a project receiver.
I think you're right.
But it's going to be worth it because the ceiling is so high. So buy him when his production is low because his ADP will fall.
JSN, on the other hand, probably buy him now
Yeah.
or before the
Yep,
season,
get him now.
because he'll come in and show out probably right away. So,
Yeah.
all right, so that's top 12. I know you're going to gripe with this. I know you're going to have issues, and let us know what they are in the comments. And you know, the bottom line is all 12 of these guys are great guys to build your dynasty team around, and they're going to be great assets in whatever order you have them in. And honestly, this is subject to a lot of shuffling. I could see a lot of arguments to be made for all these guys to be completely scrambled around, and that's totally fine. So this is not gospel. This is just our opinion. This is just how we like these players. Again, when we're doing, you know, a dynasty channel with content and stuff, a lot of that has to be subject to opinion. And you could say, well, you could get into the data more. Just let us know what you think in the comments. Let us know where you agree. Let us know where you disagree. Again, we are not gospel for how these guys should be ranked, but it is fun to go and look at some of these cornerstone assets for your dynasty team. So we're going to be coming out with all kinds of new videos just like this. We're going to do a running backs video. We're going to keep doing videos with rookies included and rookie-specific videos. Guys you should be buying in Dynasty, guys you should be selling. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. You'll get those right when they come out. Watch them. Go make your moves in Dynasty Leagues. Go help set your team up for success in the next Dynasty season. Make sure you like the video as well. Make sure you check out our locals page for all of our exclusive content there. As always, we appreciate you guys watching, and thanks for joining us.